The massive briefing room aboard the Galactic Defense Coalition flagship hummed with nervous energy. Commander Liba Oram sat in the back corner, her small human frame almost lost among the towering alien warriors that filled the space. The room itself was built to accommodate multiple species, with different-sized chairs and breathing apparatus scattered throughout. Oram watched as the various alien commanders took their positions around the holographic display table. The Kalanti warriors stood nearly 3 meters tall, their 4 muscular arms crossed as they discussed battle strategies in their clicking language. Their gray skin looked like living stone, and their black eyes never seemed to blink. Next to them, the snake-like Vortex strategists coiled and uncoiled their long bodies, their heads swaying as they analyzed data streams flowing across their personal screens. The human contingent was small. Only 12 pilots and officers had been assigned to this joint operation, and they looked tiny compared to their alien allies. Beoram felt the weight of representing her entire species in this room filled with beings who had been fighting wars among the stars for thousands of years. Captain Park Minho sat beside her, his hands folded tightly in his lap. He was her wingman, and had flown with her through 6 major battles. Despite his calm appearance, Beoram could see the tension in his shoulders. This was their first time working directly with alien military commanders, and the pressure was enormous. The mining colony on Kepler 442b has been under Corvin control for 3 months, announced General Vexville, the Kalanti Supreme Commander. His voice boomed across the room like thunder. Intelligence reports suggest they are using the colony to process rare metals for their war machine. We cannot allow this to continue. The holographic display showed the target system. Kepler 442b appeared as a small brown planet surrounded by asteroid fields. Red markers indicated known Corvan positions, while blue showed the planned approach. Routes for the Coalition fleet. Beoram studied the display carefully. The planet had 3 moons, and the asteroid field created natural cover for both attacking and defending forces. The Corvan had chosen their position well. Any direct assault would be costly in both ships and lives. Our Vorthok allies have provided detailed analysis of Corvan defensive patterns, General Vexville continued. Commander Sifver will explain. The tactical approach. A large Vorthok uncoiled from his position near the display. His scales shimmered green and gold as he moved, and his yellow eyes fixed on each officer in turn. The Corvan favor concentrated firepower over mobility. They will likely position their heavy ships near the planet and use the asteroid field to channel our approach. We must avoid their predicted kill zones. Lieutenant Kim So-young, seated with the other human pilots, raised her hand. What about their fighter screens? Our report suggests they deploy small craft in unpredictable patterns. Correct, Sithver replied. Their fighters are fast but lightly armored. Standard engagement protocols should be sufficient. The Oram felt doubt creep into her mind. The Corvan had been winning battles against coalition forces for over a year. If standard protocols were sufficient, why were they still advancing through coalition space? She kept her thoughts to herself, knowing that questioning established strategy would not be welcome from the newest member species. General Vexville activated another section of the display. Ship assignments are as follows. Kalanti battle cruisers will form the main assault force. Vorthok tactical ships will provide support and coordination. Human vessels will handle reconnaissance and cleanup operations. But Oram felt her heart sink. Reconnaissance and cleanup meant they would be kept away from the main battle, probably watching from safe distances, while the alien forces did the actual fighting. She had not joined the coalition military to watch from the sidelines. Human pilots will report to their designated squadron leaders, the general continued. Call signs will be used for all combat communications. Kalanti pilots, sound off. The alien pilots began announcing their call signs. Stormbreaker, Mountain, Crusher, Deathbringer, Starkiller. Each name reflected the fierce warrior culture of their species. They chose names that would strike fear into their enemies and honor their ancestors. The Vorthok followed with their more analytical approach. Precise strike, calculated risk. Perfect solution, logical outcome. Their names reflected their methodical nature and belief in strategic superiority. Finally, it was time for the human pilots. Captain Park Min-ho stood first. Steady hand, he announced clearly. Lieutenant Kim So-young was next. Night Owl. Other human pilots followed. Iron Will, Sharp Eye, Fast Track. Then it was Bioram's turn. She stood slowly, feeling the attention of the entire room focus on her. She had chosen her call sign years ago, back in flight school, and it had followed her through every mission since then. Butterfly, she said simply. The silence that followed was broken by a sound Bioram had never heard before. General Dexvel's mandibles began clicking rapidly, and his forearms shook slightly. The other Kalanti joined in, their stone-like faces showing what could only be amusement. Butterfly? The general repeated, his voice carrying disbelief. The humans send us someone named after a delicate flower chaser? The Vortex strategist began making soft hissing sounds, which Bioram realized was their version of laughter. Commander Sithver's scales shifted to a brighter gold, apparently indicating humor. Perhaps you should remain with the supply ships? Little Butterfly, General Dexvel continued. We would not want such a delicate creature to be damaged in combat. Bioram felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she kept her voice steady. I will take whatever assignment you give me, General. Captain Park Min-ho shifted uncomfortably beside her, his jaw clenched. The other human pilots exchanged glances, clearly unhappy with the disrespect being shown to their commander. Very well, the general said, still clicking with amusement. Butterfly will handle long-range reconnaissance. Stay well behind the main force and report what you see. Try not to get too close to anything dangerous. The briefing continued for another hour, but Bioram barely heard the details. She was assigned to reconnaissance duty despite being the coalition's most decorated human pilot. Her record included successful missions against Corvan forces, but apparently that meant nothing to the alien commanders. As the meeting ended and the various species began filing out, Bioram remained seated. She had proven herself in battle after battle, but she was still seen as weak because of her species and her call sign. The aliens judged by appearance and assumed humans were fragile. They had no idea what they were dealing with. Captain Park Min-ho waited until the room was nearly empty before speaking. Bioram, you do not have to accept this assignment. We could request a transfer to another operation. Bioram stood and straightened her uniform. No, Min-ho. We will show them what humans can do. Let them underestimate us. It will make victory even sweeter. As they walked toward the exit, Bioram looked back at the holographic display still showing the target system. The Corvan were waiting, and soon the coalition fleet would face them in battle. General Dexvel and his alien allies thought they knew how this would end. They were about to learn otherwise. The asteroid field around Kepler 442 stretched endlessly in all directions. Massive rocks tumbled slowly through space, some as large as cities, others no bigger than houses. Between them, the coalition reconnaissance squadron moved carefully. Through the darkness, Commander Bioram piloted her fighter through the maze of floating stone. Her ship was smaller than the alien craft around her, built for speed and maneuverability rather than heavy armor. The cockpit was cramped but familiar, every control within easy reach of her hands. Butterfly, this is Night Owl, came Lieutenant Kim So-young's voice over the communication system. My sensors are picking up unusual energy readings 3 kilometers ahead. Bioram checked her own displays. The readings were faint but definitely there. Something large was moving through the asteroid field, something that did not belong to the coalition fleet. Copy that, Night Owl. All units maintain formation and prepare for contact. The reconnaissance squadron consisted of 12 ships from 4 different species. The Kalanti fighters were heavy and slow, but packed with weapons. The Vorthax scouts were sleek and fast, covered in sensor equipment. The Zilani support craft bristled with communication arrays. And then there were the 3 human fighters, small and quick like hunting birds. Captain Park Min-ho's voice crackled over the com. The Coalition Command is reporting all quiet on the main approach routes. Whatever we are seeing, the enemy did not expect us to come through the asteroid field. That made sense. The asteroids provided cover, but they also made navigation dangerous. Most military commanders preferred clear space for large fleet movements. Only a reconnaissance force would risk threading through the floating rocks. Movement ahead, announced Sub-Commander Veltar from his Calanti fighter. 3 large signatures emerging from behind the cluster at bearing 270. Bahram felt her heart rate increase. Large signatures meant capital ships, probably warships. The reconnaissance mission had just become much more complicated. The first enemy ship appeared around a massive asteroid like a mountain rising from the sea. It was a Corvan dreadnought over 2 kilometers long and bristling with weapon emplacements. Its hull was dark metal covered in angular armor plates. Red lights glowed along its length like angry eyes. Contact, 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 Bahram transmitted. To the fleet. 1 Corvan dreadnought at bearing 270, range 15 kilometers. Before anyone could respond, 2 more dreadnoughts emerged from concealment behind other asteroids. The enemy had been waiting, hidden among the rocks like predators in tall grass. Now they were revealing themselves, confident that a small reconnaissance force posed no threat. "This is Sub-Commander Veltar," came the panicked voice of the Calanti. "Pilot, requesting immediate retreat." "We are outnumbered and outgunned," the other alien pilots agreed quickly. Their voices filled the communication channel with requests to withdraw to safe distance. Standard military doctrine said that reconnaissance forces should avoid engagement with superior enemies. Bahram studied her tactical display. The 3 dreadnoughts were moving into attack formation, their weapons charging for what would be a devastating bombardment of the main coalition fleet. If they were allowed to reach optimal firing position, hundreds of coalition ships and thousands of lives would be lost. "Negative on the retreat," Bahram transmitted. "We hold position and gather intelligence." "Commander, this is insane," protested Navigation Officer Slicksvin from his Vortex scout ship. "Those are capital ships. They can destroy us without effort." Lieutenant Kim So-young's fighter moved closer to Bahram's position. "Bahram, their weapon signatures are unlike anything in our database. They are charging something big, something we have never seen before." Through her cockpit window, Bahram could see energy building along the hull of the lead dreadnought. Purple light danced between massive weapon arrays, growing brighter with each passing second. The other 2 ships were doing the same thing, their hulls beginning to glow with barely contained power. The main coalition fleet was still 20 minutes away, moving carefully through the outer system. They had no idea that 3 enemy capital ships were preparing to ambush them with unknown weapons. If someone did not act quickly, the battle would be over before it began. Or made a decision that would change everything. "All units, this is Butterfly. I am going in." The response was immediate and unanimous. Every pilot in the squadron began talking at once, their voices overlapping in a chaos of protest and disbelief. "Commander, you cannot attack a dreadnought with a single fighter. The weapons on those ships will vaporize you before you get within range. This is suicide." Bahram ignored them all. She was studying the 3 enemy ships with the intensity of a hunter tracking prey. Her human brain was processing information in ways that the alien pilots could not understand. She saw patterns where they saw only chaos, opportunity where they saw only death. The Corvan dreadnoughts were not randomly positioned. They were following a specific formation, one that looked familiar. Bahram had studied military history from dozens of worlds, and something about their arrangement triggered a memory. "Kim So-young, are you seeing what I am seeing?" she asked her fellow human pilot. There was a pause before the response came. "Bahram, they are using a modified pack hunting formation, like wolves surrounding prey." "Exactly. But they have made a mistake." The alien pilots did not understand. To them, the enemy ships looked perfectly positioned for maximum firepower and mutual support. Each dreadnought could protect the others while concentrating their weapons on any threat, but Bahram saw something different. She saw a formation designed by predators who had never been prey themselves. The Corven had created what they thought was a perfect trap, but they had left themselves vulnerable to something they did not expect. A prey animal that could think like a predator. Boram's fighter began accelerating toward the enemy formation. Her small ship moved between the asteroids like a bird diving through trees, using the floating rocks for cover as she approached the massive warships. "Butterfly, what are you doing?" Captain Park Minho's voice was tight with concern. "What humans do best," Boram replied. "I'm going hunting." The first dreadnought detected her approach and began turning its weapons toward her small fighter. Purple energy lanced through space, missing her ship by mere meters. The asteroids around her exploded into clouds of glowing debris as the enemy weapons searched for their target. Boram smiled as she flew deeper into the trap. The aliens in her squadron thought she was committing suicide. The enemy thought she was just another small annoyance to be swatted aside. They were all about to learn what it meant to underestimate a human. Boram's fighter twisted through space like a leaf in a hurricane. Purple energy beams from the Corvan dreadnoughts carved glowing paths through the asteroid field, each shot powerful enough to destroy a city. Her small ship danced between the deadly streams of light, using its superior maneuverability to stay alive in what should have been certain death. The three enemy capital ships had shifted into a tighter formation, their massive hulls moving with surprising grace for vessels of their size. Their weapons tracked Boram's fighter with mechanical precision, but somehow she stayed just ahead of their targeting systems. "Butterfly, your current flight path is mathematically impossible," transmitted Navigation Officer Slicksven from his Vorthek scout ship. "No pilot should be able to avoid weapons fire from three capital ships simultaneously." Boram did not respond immediately. She was too focused on the patterns developing around her. Her human brain was processing the three-dimensional battlefield in ways that confused and amazed her alien allies. Where they saw random chaos, she saw a complex dance with rules and rhythms. Every species in the galaxy had evolved differently. The Calanti were ambush predators from a world of deep canyons and hidden caves. They preferred overwhelming force applied at close range. The Vorthak came from ocean worlds where patience and precise calculation determined survival. They liked to strike from maximum distance with perfect accuracy, but humans had evolved as persistence hunters on the plains of Africa. They had spent millions of years chasing prey across vast distances, learning to read behavior and predict movement. Most importantly, they had learned to think like both predator and prey, switching between the two mindstates as survival demanded. "All coalition units, this is Butterfly," Boram transmitted as her fighter rolled between two asteroid impacts. "The Corven ships are not attacking randomly. They are following a hunting pattern, specifically a modified version of the Terranvolf pack strategy combined with Calanti honor guard positioning." The response from General Vexval on the coalition flagship was immediate and dismissive. "Impossible! Our best strategists have analyzed Corven attack patterns for months. There is no evidence of systematic formation use." Boram's fighter suddenly changed direction, diving toward the surface of a massive asteroid. The lead dreadnought's weapons followed her down, blasting chunks of rock into space. She used the debris cloud as cover, emerging on the opposite side of the asteroid at an angle the enemy had not anticipated. "Sir, humans excel at pattern recognition under stress," she replied calmly. "It is how we survived on our world for millions of years. We learned to predict where our prey would go next, and more importantly, we learned to predict where our predators would strike." She began painting targets on the coalition tactical display, marking specific points on each dreadnought. To the alien commanders watching from the main fleet, her target selection appeared random, even suicidal. The points she had marked were some of the most heavily defended sections of each ship. "Those targets make no tactical sense," protested Commander Vextai of the Vorthek. "You are marking the strongest armor sections and the heaviest weapon concentrations. Any attack on those positions would be suicide." But Boram's fighter continued its impossible dance through the enemy fire. She was staying alive through a combination of superior human reflexes, intimate knowledge of her ship's capabilities, and something else that the aliens could not understand. She was thinking like prey while moving like a predator. "Trust me," she transmitted back. "The Corvan formation has a critical weakness, but it can only be exploited from the inside." Lieutenant Kim So-young's voice crackled over the communication channel. "But, I think I see what you are seeing. The dreadnoughts are positioned to provide mutual fire support, but their firing solutions overlap in specific zones." "Exactly, Kim. They have created kill zones for any external threat, but they have also created dead zones where their own weapons cannot track effectively. The formation is designed to fight enemies that attack from outside the pack." Captain Park Min-ho's fighter began moving closer to the battle zone, and humans attack from inside the pack. Ram smiled as she watched the enemy ships adjusting their positions. They were following the pattern perfectly, just as she had predicted. The Corvan were predators, but they were predictable predators. They had never learned to think like prey. "All units, I am transmitting detailed firing solutions to your tactical computers," she announced. "When I give the signal, I need everyone to target the points I have marked, but only when I give the signal." The alien pilots in her squadron were confused and frightened. They could see her fighter moving deeper into the enemy formation, apparently flying straight into certain destruction. Her behavior made no sense according to their understanding of combat tactics, but the human pilots understood. They had all been trained in the same academy, taught the same lessons about human military history. They knew about persistence hunting, about pack behavior, about the human ability to switch between predator and prey mindsets as needed. "Steady Hand and Night Owl acknowledge," transmitted Captain Park Min-ho and Lieutenant Kim So-young simultaneously. Ram's fighter suddenly accelerated directly toward the lead dreadnought. The massive Corvan ship responded exactly as she had predicted, turning to bring its main weapons to bear while signaling the other two ships to adjust their positions for optimal crossfire. "Now I have them," Ram whispered to herself. The three dreadnoughts moved into what they believed was the perfect formation for destroying her small fighter. Their weapons charged to maximum power, their targeting systems locked onto her ship's trajectory. In a few seconds, enough firepower to level a mountain would converge on her position, but Ram had spent the last several minutes learning their patterns, understanding their behavior, predicting their responses. She knew exactly where they would be and exactly when they would fire. More importantly, she knew something they did not know about human pilots and human technology. "All units, this is Butterfly," she transmitted as her fighter dove toward the center of the enemy formation. "Commence attack run in 10 seconds. Target the marked positions exactly as I have indicated." The alien pilots in her squadron began protesting again, but Ram was no longer listening. She was focused entirely on the three massive ships around her, watching their weapon arrays charge to full power, timing their firing cycles with the precision of a master musician conducting a symphony. Her fighters' adaptive shields began glowing as they prepared for what was coming next. The technology was new, developed specifically for human pilots who tended to push their ships beyond the normal limits of safety and sanity. 5 seconds, she announced. The Corvan dreadnoughts opened fire. Ram's fighter disappeared in a brilliant explosion of purple light as the combined firepower of 3 capital ships converged on her position. To the watching alien pilots, it looked like she had been vaporized instantly, but then her voice came over the communication channel, calm and steady. "Now." Ram's fighter emerged from the explosion like a phoenix rising from flames. Her adaptive shields flickered and sparked, overloaded but still functional. She had used the combined firepower of the 3 Corvan dreadnoughts against themselves, timing her movement so that their own weapons created a brief gap in their defensive coverage. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations. Instead of retreating to safety, Ram accelerated directly into the heart of the enemy formation. Her small fighter moved through the crossfire between all 3 massive ships, using their own weapons as cover. Every time one dreadnought fired at her, She positioned herself so that another ship had to hold its fire to avoid hitting its ally. The maneuver defied every principle of space combat doctrine. No pilot should attempt to fly between three hostile capital ships. The overlapping fields of fire made survival mathematically impossible. But BORAM was not just any pilot in humans. Did not always follow mathematical possibilities. Her fighter pulled G-forces that would have killed most alien species. The Kalanti were strong but slow, built for power rather than endurance. The Vorthak were precise but fragile, designed for careful calculation rather than split-second reactions. The Zilani were quick but small, lacking the physical stamina for sustained high-G maneuvering, but humans had evolved from persistence hunters who could run for hours without stopping, who could push their bodies beyond normal limits when survival was at stake. BORAM's heart pounded like a drum as her blood struggled to reach her brain under the crushing acceleration, but she remained conscious and alert. "Impossible," whispered Sub-Commander Veltar from his Kalanti fighter. "No organic being can survive those G-forces." Lieutenant Kim So-young's voice came over the communication channel, strained but determined. "Steady Hand and Night Owl are moving to attack positions, beginning attack run on target Alpha." The human fighters swept toward the first dreadnought, their weapons locked onto the specific points BORAM had marked. To the alien observers, the attack looked suicidal. They were targeting the most heavily armored sections of the enemy ship, the places where weapons fire would have the least effect, but BORAM had not marked those positions randomly. During her terrifying flight through the enemy formation, she had been analyzing the ships with sensors and visual observation. Her human brain had processed thousands of details that computer systems might miss, looking for patterns and weaknesses that only intuition could detect. The Corvin dreadnoughts were not just weapons platforms. They were living ships in a way, with organic components integrated into their mechanical systems. The heavily armored sections that BORAM had targeted were not just armor plating. They were junction points where the organic and mechanical systems connected, where the ship's nervous system met its artificial brain. "Firing," announced Captain Park Min-ho. The human weapons were not the most powerful in the Coalition fleet. They were designed for precision rather than raw destruction, built by a species that preferred surgical strikes to overwhelming force. The energy beams that lanced out from the human fighters were thin and focused, designed to cut rather than smash. The first dreadnought shuddered as the human weapons found their targets. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. The massive ship continued its attack, its weapons still tracking BORAM's fighter through the chaos of the battle. Then the ship's lights began flickering. BORAM had severed the connections between the organic control systems and the mechanical weapon arrays. The dreadnought could still think, but it could no longer coordinate its attacks. Its weapons began firing randomly, some targeting empty space, others accidentally hitting asteroids or even the other Corvin ships. "Target Alpha is neutralized," BORAM transmitted as she pulled her fighter into an impossible spiral that carried her toward the second dreadnought. Moving to target Beta. The second Corvin ship had seen what happened to its companion and was trying to adjust its tactics. But BORAM had studied its behavior patterns during the first attack. She knew how it would respond, where it would position itself. When it would fire, her fighter dove under the massive hull, so close that she could see individual armor plates and weapon emplacements. The ship's defensive guns tried to track her, but she was moving too fast and too close for their targeting systems to follow. She found what she was looking for on the underside of the ship, a section of hull that glowed slightly different from the rest, where the ship's organic heart pumped nutrients to its mechanical systems. It was protected by the heaviest armor, but it was also the most critical target. BORAM's weapons fired in a concentrated burst, their energy focused on a single point no larger than her fighter's cockpit. The beam cut through meter after meter of advanced armor plating, boring deeper into the ship's vital systems. The second dreadnought's weapons fell silent. Its hull lights dimmed as its organic components went into emergency shutdown mode. The massive ship was still intact, but it was no longer a threat. "Target Beta neutralized," Bah, announced, her voice steady despite the incredible stress she was under. Moving to target Gamma. The third Corvin ship was the largest and most heavily armed. Its captain had apparently decided that subtlety was not working and had begun firing every weapon simultaneously, turning the space around Bioram's fighter into a storm of deadly energy, but Bioram was no longer the same pilot who had entered the battle. The engagement had pushed her beyond normal human limits, into a state of awareness that few people ever experienced. She could see the patterns in the enemy fire, predict where each beam would go before it was fired, anticipate the ship's movements. Before its captain made the decisions, she was not just fighting anymore. She was dancing. Her fighter moved through the weapon fire like water flowing around stones. Every turn was perfectly timed, every acceleration precisely calculated. She was not just avoiding the enemy weapons. She was using them, letting the dreadnought's own firepower create openings for her to exploit. The alien pilots watching from safe distance could barely follow her movements. Their sensors showed her fighter moving in ways that their computers insisted were impossible. She was pulling maneuvers that required split-second timing and perfect spatial awareness, reacting to threats faster than their instruments could measure. "How is she doing that?" asked Navigation Officer Slicksven. His voice filled with awe. Captain Park Minho answered from his own fighter, which was struggling to keep up with Bioram's impossible flight path. "She is not thinking anymore. She is just reacting. Pure instinct. And millions of years of human evolution." Bioram found her target on the third dreadnought. Unlike the others, this ship had multiple connection points between its organic and mechanical systems. She would need to hit all of them simultaneously to disable it effectively. Her fighter's weapon systems were not designed for multiple simultaneous targets. But Bioram had an idea that was either brilliant or insane. She flew directly toward the dreadnought's main weapon array, timing her approach so that the ship would fire its primary cannon just as she reached optimal position. At the last possible second, she activated her ship's reflective shields and rolled to present her fighter's armored belly to the massive energy beam. The dreadnought's own weapon fire bounced off her shields and scattered in multiple directions, striking the exact targets she needed to hit. The ship had effectively attacked itself, severing its own control connections with a perfectly placed shot. The third dreadnought went dark. Bioram's fighter emerged from the explosion, smoking and damaged but still flying. Behind her, 3 Corvan capital ships drifted helplessly in space, their weapons silent, their crews stunned by what had just happened. She checked her mission timer. 17 minutes and 34 seconds from first contact to final neutralization. "Coalition Command, this is Butterfly," she transmitted, her voice hoarse with exhaustion. 3 enemy dreadnoughts have been neutralized and are ready for capture. The approach route is clear for the main fleet. The communication channel was silent for a long moment before Captain Yundahi's voice came from the command ship. "Butterfly, confirm your previous transmission. Did you just disable 3 capital ships?" Bioram looked at her tactical display, which showed the 3 massive enemy vessels drifting powerless among the asteroids. "Confirmed, Command. 3 Corvin dreadnoughts, neutralized not destroyed. They are intact and can be salvaged for intelligence purposes." Another pause, longer this time. "Butterfly, you have just broken a 20-year-old coalition combat record. The previous record for single-pilot capital ship disabling was 3 light cruisers in 43 minutes. You just neutralized 3 dreadnoughts in under 18 minutes." Bioram smiled wearily as her fighter limped toward the rendezvous. Point: she had not set out to break any records. She had simply done what needed to be done, using the skills and instincts that millions of years of human evolution had given her, but she had a feeling that General Dexville would not be laughing at her call sign anymore. The coalition command ship's debriefing room was filled with an unusual tension. Commander Bioram sat across from General Dexville, her small human frame dwarfed by the massive Kalanti warrior. But something had changed since their first meeting. The alien general no longer looked at her with amusement or dismissal. His four black eyes held something that looked very much like respect. The battle for Kepler 442b had ended in complete coalition victory. The mining colony had been retaken with minimal casualties, and the captured Corvan dreadnoughts were providing valuable intelligence about enemy technology and tactics. Most importantly, the enemy fleet that had been terrorizing this sector of space had been effectively destroyed, but everyone in the room knew that the victory had hinged on 17 minutes and 34 seconds of impossible flying by a pilot they had dismissed as weak and inexperienced. "How?" General Dexville asked simply. His voice had lost its booming authority and carried genuine curiosity. Oram was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. The battle had pushed her beyond normal human limits, and she was still recovering from the physical and mental strain. But she owed these beings an explanation, especially after they had doubted her capabilities. "General, may I ask you about Calanti hunting practices?" The question seemed to surprise him. "Our hunting practices? We are ambush predators. We wait in concealment until prey comes within range, then strike with overwhelming force. It is efficient and honorable." The Ram nodded and turned to Commander Sithver, the Vorthak strategist. "And your people?" "We are pursuit predators," the snake-like being replied. "We track our prey over long distances, calculating the optimal moment to strike. Patience and precision are our strengths." "Both excellent strategies," Ram said. "But humans evolved differently. We were persistence hunters on the plains of Africa. We did not have the strength to ambush like the Calanti or the patience to calculate like the Vorthak. Instead, we learned to run." Sergeant Li Jinwu, who had been silent until now, spoke up from his position near the door. "General, humans did not evolve to be the strongest or the smartest predators. We evolved to be the most adaptable. We learned to think like our prey so we could predict where they would go. More importantly, we learned to think like our predators so we could survive when we were hunted." Ram stood and walked to the tactical display, which still showed the aftermath of the battle. The 3 disabled Corvan dreadnoughts were being towed toward coalition repair facilities, their advanced technology soon to be studied and reverse-engineered. "The Corvan were using a hunting formation," she explained. "But they made a critical mistake. They assumed their prey would behave like typical coalition forces, attacking from outside their formation with conventional tactics." General Dexville leaned forward, his massive form casting shadows across the table. "But you attacked from inside their formation. You used their own weapons against them." "Exactly. Humans spent millions of years being hunted by predators much larger and stronger than ourselves. We learned that the safest place to be when facing a pack of predators is not outside their reach, but inside their formation where they cannot coordinate their attacks effectively." Commander Sithver's scales shifted to a thoughtful blue color. "You turned their strength into weakness. Their overlapping fields of fire became blind spots when you positioned yourself correctly." The Ram nodded. "Every species develops hunting and combat strategies based on their evolutionary history. The Corvan evolved as apex predators on their world. They never learned to think like prey because they never were prey. That made them predictable." Lieutenant Kim So-young entered the room carrying a datapad filled with technical readouts from the battle. The adaptive shield technology also played a crucial role. Human-designed systems are built to handle extreme stress and rapid changes, because human pilots tend to push equipment beyond normal operational limits. "Which brings us to the question of your call sign," General Dexville said, his mandibles clicking softly. "Butterfly. I assumed it was a sign of weakness." But smiled for the first time since the battle. "My call sign comes from something humans call the butterfly effect. It is the idea that small changes can have enormous consequences. A butterfly flapping its wings in one place can eventually cause a storm on the other side of the world." She gestured toward the tactical display showing the captured enemy ships. "Every human pilot chooses their call sign based on this principle. We want to remind ourselves that even the smallest action can change the outcome of a battle. We do not choose names to intimidate our enemies. We choose them to remind ourselves of our responsibility." The alien general was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. The Kalanti culture valued individual strength and courage above all else. Their war names reflected personal achievements and victories. The idea of choosing a name based on responsibility rather than power was foreign to them. The Kalanti choose our war names based on our greatest victories, he admitted. We assumed humans did the same. Captain Park Minho stepped forward. No, sir. We choose them based on what we hope to become, not what we have already accomplished. The room fell silent as the implications of this cultural difference sank in. The aliens had been judging human capabilities based on their own values and assumptions, not understanding that humans approached warfare from a fundamentally different perspective. General Vexville stood slowly, his massive frame towering over everyone else in the room. But when he spoke, his voice carried none of its earlier arrogance. Butterfly, he said formally, the Galactic Defense Coalition would be honored to have you lead our next strategic planning session. Your insights into enemy behavior patterns could save thousands of lives. Ram inclined her head respectfully. I would be honored, General. But I hope you understand that what I did today was not unique to me. Any human pilot trained in our methods could have achieved similar results. We are not superhuman. We are just different. Commander Sithver's scales shifted to a bright gold, indicating excitement. Different in ways that complement our existing capabilities. The Kalanti provide strength, the Vorthak provide precision, the Zelani provide speed, and humans provide adaptability. More than that, Ram corrected gently. Humans provide the ability to think like prey when facing superior enemies. We understand what it means to be hunted, and that understanding makes us dangerous in ways that pure predators cannot anticipate. Lieutenant Kim So-young looked up from her datapad. The tactical recordings from the battle are already being studied by coalition strategists. Initial analysis suggests that human-style adaptive tactics could be integrated with existing doctrine to create hybrid strategies that are far more effective than any single-species approach. General Vexville nodded slowly. We have much to learn from each other. The coalition was founded on the principle that different species working together are stronger than any single species fighting alone. Today you proved that principle in the most direct way possible. But Rum walked to the large viewport that showed the Kepler 442 system. The mining colony's lights were visible on the planet's surface, no longer under enemy control. The asteroid field where she had fought the 3 dreadnoughts was now filled with coalition salvage ships, recovering valuable technology and materials. General, there is one more thing I want you to understand about humans, she said without turning around. We do not fight to prove we are the strongest or the smartest. We fight to protect what we care about and to understand our enemies well enough to defeat them without unnecessary destruction. She gestured toward the disabled Corvin ships being towed toward the repair facilities. Those ships and their crews are intact. They can be repaired, and their crews can be questioned or even recruited if they are willing. Destroying them would have been easier, but preserving them gives us knowledge and options. General Vexville approached the viewport and stood beside her, looking out at the scene of their victory. The Kalanti way would have been to destroy the enemy ships completely. Total victory through overwhelming force. Both approaches have their place, Ram replied diplomatically. But humans prefer to win by understanding rather than by domination. It takes longer, but the results tend to be more stable. As they watched, a small shuttle detached from one of the captured Corvin dreadnoughts. The first group of enemy prisoners was being transferred to coalition custody, where they would be treated according to galactic law and questioned about their military objectives. The galaxy has learned something important about humanity today, General Vexville said quietly. You do not just fight to win, you fight to understand. And that understanding makes you the most valuable allies anyone could hope for. Ram smiled as she watched the shuttle dock with the coalition command ship. The Corvin prisoners would be interrogated, but they would also be offered the chance to defect if they were willing to provide information about their military structure. Some might even choose to join the coalition, bringing their knowledge and skills to the fight for galactic peace. It had been a good day's work. Not just because they had won a battle, but because they had won it in a way that opened new possibilities for the future.